everyone, what is going on? MysticFox live and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be doing a little bit more Payday 3 theorizing. As in this video, I thought it'd be a good idea to explore which characters I believe are most likely to return in Payday 3, which ones I think actually will show up, and which ones are doomed to never return in the Payday franchise. I'm going to use some logic as well as some of my own personal opinions to deduce which characters I think are the most likely ones, and then also give my thoughts on which ones will actually turn up in the base game, and which may return at some point as DLC. It goes without saying, obviously, that this one is down to personal opinion, and if you have any characters you'd like to see return in Payday 3, then leave them down in the comment section below, and let's see which ones are the more popular characters that people want to see in Payday 3. But without any further ado, let's get right to the video and start off by rolling the intro. So in this video, I'm going to look at both Heisters and Contractors and talk to you about which ones I think are most likely to return. Now, it goes without saying that Payday 3 will have new characters. That is undoubtable, and so the amount of old characters that can return is no doubt going to be impacted by that. With that being said, I'm going to deal with each type of character chunk by chunk. So let's start off first with the original Heisters in Payday 2. This means all the characters that were created with Payday's lore in mind and were not part of any other intellectual property before they arrived in Payday 2. Those characters were all originally designed with Payday 2 in mind. There was no crossover taking place with any IP, and so in terms of licensing, there is no agreement Overkill has to reach with an outside property to put them back into Payday 3. But which ones are most likely? Well, let's go through it. The first thing I'd reference in my argument in this video is the image provided by Starbreeze when the publishers for Payday 3 were announced not that long ago. As you all probably no doubt remember, there was an image teased of 4 characters looking out over what appeared to be the New York City skyline. The characters were silhouetted, so it wasn't easy to spot which characters they were, but a lot of people have reached their own conclusions. The most forefront character, middle on the right, is Dallas, who we can see quite clearly. I don't think anyone's arguing over that one. The mask is fairly obvious despite being silhouetted, so it's safe to say Dallas will be returning in Payday 3 without a shadow of a doubt. Which makes sense because he's the lead character, he's the face of Payday. If he wasn't in Payday 3, it would be a bit weird. To Dallas's left, I believe is Chains, quite short hair, quite close to the skin. I believe that looks like Damien Poitier's figure, just me personally. He's one of the lead characters, and Damien has very good relations with Overkill Software. He gets on with them very well, and he is one of the most popular characters in the game, so just like Dallas, I would back him to be very likely to return. The other 2 characters, however, have been up for debate. The character on the right, people have not been able to decide between Hoxton and Houston. I am personally in the Hoxton camp myself. I feel as though this face looks a bit more like Hoxton than Houston to me. I feel like it matches Josh Len's facial profile a bit more. So if it is Hoxton, again, that makes him likely to return. If it's Houston, same argument there. But for me, I'm going to bank on it being Hoxton because I feel like that's the more likely one. The thing you have to remember with Hoxton is that he wasn't originally in Payday 2 when it launched. And if you haven't seen my interview with him as part of my podcast, The Redcast, if you haven't seen that episode, I do recommend you go watch it if you're a fan of Hoxton, but he revealed in that podcast that it wasn't down to scheduling conflicts that he didn't come back in Payday 2. Overkill just didn't ask him back. Because the most common thing is, I mean, I literally said this to you in February, was that I believed what was going on the internet, which was that you didn't come back because of scheduling conflicts, but that seems to be just a statement that's thrown around now, and a lot of people presume to be the norm.
Yeah, no, it's bollocks. Total bollocks.
Best way to sum it up, really.
No, I just wasn't. I never got a phone call, basically.
It was only once the community begged for Pete Gold to be added back in that Overkill then reached out to Pete and said, right, you're wanted, get back in here. And so I doubt he'll be overlooked again. If he was added by force by the community pretty much, I very much doubt history will repeat itself in Payday 3. I do personally believe Hoxton will be in there from the start. As for the character on the far left, I'm not too sure who that is. People have argued it could be your own personal character. Some people have said it could be Duke. There are a whole different number of answers here, so I'm not going to even touch that character. I don't think it's worth it because I'd just be speculating. So with 3 of the original characters down, let's move on next to Wolf. Now, I'll tell you one thing for certain. If Wolf does come back in Payday 3, Ulf Anderson will not be playing that character. For those of you who aren't that familiar with the Starbreeze drama, you don't really need to be completely honest with you, but Ulf Anderson, who plays Wolf, and his brother Bo were both key figures working at Overkill Software when Payday 2 came out. Ulf Anderson left the company a few years after Payday 2 released, choosing to make his own studio 10 Chambers, where he now works on the horror co-op game GTFO. I haven't spoken to Ulf Anderson personally, but I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to work out that Ulf is quite happy working on that game himself and doesn't really want to come back to Payday anytime soon. Which is why Wolf never had his voice lines updated after around 2015, and when the medic was added in 2016, 2016, they had to splice two of Wolf's old lines together so that Wolf could shout out, "It's a medic," because Wolf was not going to come back just to record a line for that. So there are two options for Wolf. Number one, Wolf is recast and brought back in Payday 3. This is entirely feasible because Chains was recast going into Payday 2. For those of you who don't know, Damien Poitier was not Chains in Payday the Heist. He was actually played by Howard Thompson, a completely different actor who played Chains in a completely different way. So it isn't outside of the realm of possibility for history to repeat itself again with Wolf. And Wolf is a very popular character, so I honestly wouldn't put it past Starbreeze to recast him because a lot of people will notice if Wolf isn't in the next game. The original four are very important characters, and since, as I've said, Dallas, Hoxton, and Chains are all very likely to come back in the next game, to miss out Wolf out of the original four when the other three are almost definitely going to come back, it just wouldn't make sense. So while the choice is either recast Wolf or don't bring him back, I'm leaning much more towards the recast option. I personally believe Wolf will return, but with a new voice actor helming him. As for Houston, I'm less sure because I don't believe Houston's been as involved in the Payday community since the game came out. Derek Ray never reprised his role as Houston in any live action stuff beyond the web series. There may be reasons for that. I haven't interviewed him either, so I don't know what the logic is behind the scenes there. His Twitter bio does say always Houston in Payday 2, so it's not like he doesn't like the game or something. I'm sure he'd be more than willing to come back if asked. And a lot of people do like Houston. However, I'm not as confident as to whether or not he'll come back. As I've said, I don't feel like his character has been quite as involved in more recent Payday events in the way that maybe some of the others might have been. So I'm going to mark Houston with a question mark and say that it really could go either way. Up next though, we have got Clover, the first female heister that was ever added to the game, our Irish heister, and again a quite popular character. Now Clover never saw a live action adaptation, so we can't judge the character off whether or not they appeared in live action trailers. Additionally, her voice actress is not very easy to contact. She doesn't have a great deal, if any, social accounts as far as I know, so it isn't exactly easy to gauge whether or not she'd be willing to reprise her role in Payday 3. So unfortunately, once again, I'm going to have to stamp a question mark on Clover because I just don't know either way. Up next is Dragon, a very good character that I quite like myself, but I don't personally believe he is high at the top of many people's tier lists in the best Payday 2 characters. And for this reason, I'm not sure whether or not Dragon will return in Payday 3. Beyond his introduction in Payday 2, he did, however, reprise his role in live action for both the E3 teaser and the subsequent Biker Packs trailer, and I know for a fact that his actor Dragomir does still interact with a lot of the Payday community, so I feel as though he is more involved in the community than other actors might be, so it's possible, but I'm not guaranteeing that Dragon will return at some point in Payday 3. Up next is Bonnie, a character that's getting a little bit more limelight now, being in the key art for the current City of Gold campaign for Payday 2, but that's about all she's had to her character since she was added in 2015. I don't think a lot of people hate Bonnie, but I don't think a lot of people love her either, so I think that she is one of the most unlikely characters to return out the original Payday 2 heisters. Sokol has a little bit more of a following behind him, but again, didn't really get a great deal of attention since his character was added. He was one of the more DLC-based characters that didn't really take the forefront going forward in the game. So again, not really too sure. And I'm going to have to lump Jiro in as well. I've not seen his voice actor interact with the community very much since the character was added. The most standout things that have happened with Jiro to me in Payday 2 is first off the Search for Kento event and all the stuff that boiled down after that. And also at one point in time, his character getting some English lines inside of the safe house. So as a character, Jiro is obviously getting more used to living in America, in Washington DC, or wherever the Payday gang choose to move. So I think it's feasible that he could come back, but again, not really sure how likely it's going to be. Next on our character list is Sydney. Now, I know people are going to think I'm biased here because Sydney is my favorite heister in the game, but I do honestly feasibly believe that Sydney is likely to return at some point in the future. I'm not too sure whether she'll be a launch character, and I'll get into my arguments of launch and DLC characters later in the video, but Georgia Van Cuylenburg, out of everybody in the entire Payday 2 cast, I feel has the best relationship with Starbreeze because she used to work for them, and that's how she got the role to begin with. She's very close with Almir as well as Eric and Damien and some of the other Payday 2 cast members, and she has expressed both to me several times and to other members of the Payday 2 community that she definitely wants to come back as Sydney in the next game. So there is no question as to Georgia's willingness to come back, and Sydney, I think personally, while I think some people don't like her character and the way she speaks and stuff, I think she is more of a Marmite character, I think she is likely to come back, but more as a DLC. We'll get to that later. Next up, we've got Rust, and he is right at the bottom of the pile of likely people to return because he is just not going to come back. I've talked about this in my tier list video, but Ron Perlman's performance was just not very good, and he also said in a Reddit Q&A that he only took the job for the money. He's got no interest in the Payday franchise, and I personally think it was probably a case of, I've done this role, let's move on. Moving down to the last three now, we have got Sangres, Duke, and Joy. So let's start off with Sangres. Much like the other two, this character was added quite late in Payday 2's life cycle, and so we haven't had as much chance to see this character evolve as perhaps some of the earlier ones in Payday 2's life cycle. There are quite a few Sangres mains, and one thing I love about his character is his constant shirt changing in between heists, but I don't have any evidence suggesting that Sangres' voice actor would be willing to return, nor do I have any real key evidence that Sangres might come back at any point in Payday 3. So I'm going to mark him as unlikely. Next up, we've got Duke. Now, out of the later added characters, Duke I feel is the most likely to return in Payday 3. Most characters that are added to Payday 2, either as free or paid DLC characters, have a bit of backstory, and that's it, they're forgotten. Duke became pivotal in the closing story of Payday 2. All the stuff with Lindenhurst, the coffers, the White House, Bane becoming the president, Duke played a very, very integral role in all of that. And so to me, he stands out as one of the more interesting characters. Also, I just really like his character. His voice actor's really good, his character's interesting, and a lot of people do like Duke. And so out of the later added characters, I feel like he is very, very likely to come back at some point because he is loved so much. Although something tells me in my heart he might be one of those much-loved Payday 2 characters that just doesn't make it over. I don't know why I have that feeling, but I have a funny feeling that while it seems like he could come back, he might not. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. And finally, closing off our original Heisters list, we have Joy. Now, Joy is not one of people's favourite Heisters. She was added as part of the Nintendo Switch launch for Payday 2, and people don't tend to love her character very much. She's very late in the pecking order, she's not had much chance to develop her character, but because her character was based so much on the look of the Switch, I mean, her shoes are literally the different coloured Joy-Cons on a Nintendo Switch. She seems a bit more like a brand deal character, although not really a brand deal character, so a bit in the middle, but I think she's unlikely to come back. And so that's the original Payday characters covered. Let's move on next to the crossover characters. Now, I have a more general argument for all of these. Crossover characters, to me, are less likely to return in Payday 3 based on just the core argument that they involve agreements with other companies, getting licensing agreements sorted, which cost time and money, and it's not the most feasible thing for a company that's only just got out of bankruptcy and has only just been fully funded to make their next game. So I don't think any crossover characters will launch with the game. However, there are some characters that could return down the line. John Wick has had DLC crossovers with both his first and second films. The character himself was added to coincide with the John Wick 1 film launch in 2014, and the John Wick heists were launched to coincide with John Wick Chapter 2 launching in 2017. The only reason I personally believe there wasn't any content for John Wick released alongside Chapter 3 was that was the point where Payday 2 didn't have any DLC content in the works. Updates were first dropped at the end of 2018 and didn't get kicked back up again until November 2019, which means that John Wick Chapter 3's release date had come and gone by that point. I feel like Lionsgate and Overkill have a better relationship than most other brands when they're having agreements with Overkill, so I do feel like there is a likelihood John Wick could come back later down the line, but considering John Wick Chapter 4 releases next year and Payday 3 is marked for 2023, if he does come back, I feel like it might be when John Wick 5 releases, since we already know that film is coming and it'd be the first John Wick film to release while Payday 3 has hopefully launched and is releasing DLC, so that would be a perfect opportunity in my opinion for the two franchises to coincide once more, either with the same voice actor, a different one, or if by some miracle Keanu Reeves actually plays John Wick this time around in the next game. I'd certainly love to see that, and I know I'm not alone in that. The other likely character to return at the crossovers to me is Jacket, because people adore Jacket. Out of all the heisters in the game, Jacket is constantly high up in people's tier lists. People adore that character. While it has been confirmed that there will never be a Hotline Miami 3, I don't entirely believe that that would stop Jacket from coming back over to Payday 3 if enough people asked for it. And considering how many people in the community love Jacket, I feel that there probably would be people asking when Payday 3 comes out, so I'm going to mark Jacket as a possibility, but not guaranteed. However, the rest of the characters I just don't see coming back over. Bodhi was a crossover with Point Break, a film that did not do very well. It was a remake that wasn't very popular. Jimmy coincided with Hardcore Henry, a film that also did not do very well. Plans for a sequel were scrapped because barely anyone went to the cinema to watch it. Scarface, we already know what happened with Payday 2 Scarface. The agreement ran out during Payday 2's life cycle and you can't even buy him anymore. And then Ethan and Healer, do I need to talk about H2H3? No, I don't. They're not coming back. We all know that. So like I said, as a more general thing, the crossover characters are less likely. But that rounds off the entire list of heisters. I've talked about all the heisters I think are most likely to return in Payday 3. Let's talk now about the contractors. As a reminder, our contractors are Bane, Locke, Vlad, the Elephant, the Continental, the Butcher, Hector, and the Dentist. Bane is not coming back. Let's start off the bat with him. Now, I have got an episode of my podcast coming out very soon featuring Sam and Vickland. The episode will be public on May 24th, so that's 2 weeks this Monday. And we talk all about Sam and Vickland doing his music and playing Bane, and he made it very clear in that interview, which you'll be able to watch when it comes out, that he won't be coming back as Bane. There was a very key reason why he was cast as Bane to begin with, and it wasn't because he wants to be a voice actor. There'll be loads of explanation in the podcast, and I don't want to give the whole game away. But what I will spoil from that interview quite clearly is that Simon is done with Bane. He's quite happy working with GTFO, and I don't think that will change anytime soon. The possibility, of course, occurs that with Bane now being the president and being played by someone else, that he could return as a key figure, but Simon Vickler may not be attached to him. Either way, the Bane we know and love from Payday 2 is gone. That's just a fact. Locke has had one of the most interesting character arcs in the entire game, going from a character that was an extra contractor added to the game that people kind of liked, but he didn't have much to him, to becoming the next Bane, talking you through every heist, and honestly being one of the most entertaining characters in the game. I just really enjoy Locke. And it also doesn't hurt that Ian Russell is one of the loveliest people in the community. He interacts with everybody via his Twitter and just through the community generally. He gets involved with all sorts of things. He is very, very, very keen to come back as Locke in Payday 3. He said it himself in interviews with me and with other people. So whether he comes back as a contractor, as a key figure, as the commentator talking you through all the heists, whatever it might be, I'd say it's fairly likely we'll see Locke in some capacity in Payday 3. Vlad is also an interesting one because Ilya Volok, his actor, has also said he would be very willing to come back in Payday 3. And the only interesting thing to pick up on is during the offshore Payday cutscene, Vlad said, quote, quote, "If you guys are out, I'm out too." And as we know, those guys are not out. We don't know how they're going to write the characters out of that final cutscene to bring them back into Payday 3, but if Dallas, Hoxton, Chains, etc. come back, there's no reason Vlad couldn't. Will the crazy Ukrainian contractor come back? I think it's possible. I really do. The Elephant hasn't had quite as much involvement in the game. I know he was a bit of a part of the story. He got arrested by Commissioner Garrett at one point during Payday 2's story ramping up. But as far as Bokeem Woodbine goes, you know, he came back as the Elephant live action in Hardcore Henry, and then also came back in the biker heists. But since then, since 2016, he's not come back. But he did reprise his role after the game came out, so I think it is possible Bokeem will be willing to come back, but I just don't know for sure. So he gets a question mark from me. The Continental being the only crossover one, again, the same logic stands as with the John Wick character pack. It is entirely possible there could be another crossover, but I don't think it'll be when the game launches. It all depends on what happens between Overkill and Lionsgate. So right now it's unlikely, but it could happen down the line. The Butcher, unfortunately, will not be coming back. For those of you who don't know, her actress, Mira Furlan, passed away not that long ago, and so because of that, the Butcher will not be coming back. I don't need to give any more explanation there. I think it's better we let the character rest as well. As for Hector... yeah, he dead. And as for the dentist... yes! Yes! Yeah, he ain't coming back either. A very, very good character, but not coming back. Whew, okay, so that is the full list of characters, people coming back in Payday 3, which ones I think are likely, which ones I think are not. Now let's talk very briefly about what I said earlier about Payday 3's characters and launch/DLC. As a lot of us know now, Payday 3 will be following a similar model to Payday 2 of games as a service, having the game launch at base and then adding loads of content afterwards for at least the next 18 months. And so because of that, it is very likely we'll see DLC characters, DLC heists, DLC weapons, whatever Overkill choose to go with. There'll be lots of DLCs either way. The question that arises is which characters will be present at launch in Payday 3 and which ones might return later down the line. And it all really boils down to how many characters Overkill want to launch the game with. Now, Payday the Heist and Payday 2 both launched with 4 characters. Payday 2 now has 22 Heisters left in the game, and if you even take out the ones that I was talking about that aren't likely to come back, there's still too many. I think personally seeing the core 4 return would probably be the most likely thing, but you've also got to factor in there'll probably be some new characters too. I would imagine the game might launch with more than 4 characters this time, maybe about 5 or 6, you know, bring back the core 4 and maybe a couple of new characters. What I think is possibly likely is they might go for pre-ordering and getting an extra character for free, a DLC that might release as its own standalone thing down the line, but pre-order people get access to them first. Or maybe they'll actually launch with a few DLC characters as well. But as I said, there are characters like Duke or Sydney or Houston or Clover who are more likely to come back but aren't part of the core 4 that could return later down the line and just not be part of the base game. I think it's entirely likely we'll launch with a few more than 4 characters but factor in the core 4 and see some other people return later down the line. But I wouldn't put it past Overkill to do a DLC character releasing either as a pre-order thing, as a standalone DLC, or maybe even part of some kind of ultimate edition for the game. I mean, let's face it, a lot of games these days are releasing with several different versions. The standard, the special, the oh my god so special, spend so much money in this game and get loads of free stuff edition. And so the point I'd like to make is while I think there are a number of Payday 2 characters that could return in Payday 3, we don't know for certain which ones it will be or in what capacity they might return in. You know, it's entirely possible that all these characters could return and be NPCs. You might have to play as new characters the whole time. You might have to even make your own character. We don't know what the plan is yet. But at least in some capacity, I do believe that a lot of these characters will come back, as I've explained throughout this video. But that rounds off this Payday 3 video. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, make sure to give it a thumbs up. It tells me you like this content and would like to see more. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please consider doing so. It's quick, it's free, and I'll always love you for doing so, and you'll never miss out on any future Payday content on this channel. And as always, if you're not following my socials, Twitch is RedArcherLive, Twitter and Instagram are also both RedArcherLive. And if you want to support me on Patreon or as a channel member, links to both of those are in the description. Donations support myself and the channel to keep things going and to keep making more content, and to hopefully at some point make this a proper job for me, because honestly, I'd really like it to be. But that does it for this video, so thank you all very much for watching. I will see you all very soon with a brand new one. Until then, look after yourselves, stay safe, and I'll see you all soon. Thanks for watching.